Are you ready for the next big family Christmas movie? And it's coming from the guy who brought us The Chosen.
When I first finished reading it, I said, I have to make this movie. There's no one else who can make this movie. I've got to find the rights and get them. And so I pursued them for almost 20 years.
This is CIA, Contagious Influencers of America. I'm David Sams. Dallas Jenkins is joining me on the podcast today. He's the creator, director, co-writer, and executive producer of the hit series The Chosen. And he has something big that he's been working on, and it comes out this November. It's the best Christmas pageant ever movie, and it opens on November the 8th. And this is going to be an incredible film. It's based on a bestseller, and it's heartwarming, something for the entire family. So let's bring on Dallas Jenkins, but first, let's take a closer look at the best Christmas pageant ever.
Don't miss out. The annual Christmas pageant tickets are on sale now.
They're advertising it on TV now?
The pageant is an especially big deal this year. It's the 75th anniversary.
I want to give special mention to Grace for volunteering to direct it.
You did what?
Oh no. Did somebody die?
It's worse than that, son.
It's going to be the best Christmas pageant ever.
Oh no. It's the Hermans. Now. The Hermans are absolutely the worst kids in the history of the world.
What'd they do now, dear? Break another window?
Set something on fire?
Steal your lunch and then punch you for not having any candy? No, even worse. We're gonna be in your Bible play.
Herdmans in church.
Oh boy.
We take the pageant seriously.
It's about community
And tradition.
What do you all suggest, that I kick the Herdmans out of the church?
Yes.
I want to be Mary, and Ralph wants to be Joe.
And the angel of the Lord?
The Herdmen shouldn't be here.
They're a poor influence.
You don't look like any Mary I've seen before.
Don't touch him. I'm happy to take over the part at any time.
I can't just kick him out.
I thought you all might be interested in one of my stuffs.
You never told me you visited the Herdmans.
I got the biggest ham for you guys. Is your mom home?
Not when the sun's up. What if the Hermans ruin this for you?
They probably will, but it's not about me. Jesus was born for the Herdmans as much as he was for us. We'll be missing the whole point of the story if we turn them away.
Now that's a pageant I'd actually like to see. Mother Mary puffing on a cigar, shepherds clobbering each other with their hooks. $5 say they burned down the manger.
Hey, Dallas, welcome. Good to see you again.
Hey, thanks, David. Thanks for having me on. And let me say real quick, I spilled some water while I was taking a sip before I came on, and so this is not meant to be stylish. This is just a dripping T-shirt, so I apologize in advance.
We need to bring in the PA with the blow dryer real quick. That'll work.
Yeah, I wish I had that power.
So listen, we're real excited about this project that you have coming up. As a matter of fact, I watched it last night, and what are you trying to do? Create another Christmas classic?
That's not a bad goal. Honestly, I know we're joking around a little bit here, but one of the reasons I wanted so badly to make it was because there hasn't been a Christmas classic in a while. I can count on one hand the number of Christmas movies over the last, 30, 40 years that I think really kind of stand the test of time. We've got tons of romance Christmas. You can see it, literally 60, 70 of them each year between Hallmark and Lifetime and Netflix. And every now and then there's a theatrical movie that comes out that's got some comedy or whatever. But to have a Christmas classic that also includes the deep story of the Nativity, I think is a great opportunity. So I'm hoping that's what happens with audiences this time around.
So first of all, let's talk about the story. It was a best-selling book, and then you got the rights. Obviously, you got the rights, but how did that all come about?
Yeah. So about 20 years ago, my wife was at Pottery Barn, and up on the counter when she was checking out was copies of The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. And that's a book that's been around for 50 years, actually, a little over 50 years. It was a small TV movie in the 80s. It's been done as a play all over the world. So a lot of people have heard of it and millions have read it. But my wife had been like, oh man, I have a vague recollection of this growing up, but let's take it home. So we read it to our kids. And when I was in the last couple chapters, after having laughed throughout the book, I was crying so much, I had to hand the book to Amanda so she could read it to the kids. She was crying. She had to hand it back to me. And it became a Christmas tradition to not only read that book, but for our kids to make fun of us for crying in the last couple chapters and not being able to get through it. And when I first finished reading it, I said, I have to make this movie. There's no one else who can make this movie. I've got to find the rights and get them. And so I pursued them for almost 20 years. And the rights holders were always doing it with another studio. And I remember praying and hoping that the movie wouldn't actually get greenlit because I just couldn't imagine anyone else making it. And then when The Chosen came out a few years ago, the mother of the rights holder said to her son, man, have you seen this new show, The Chosen? It's amazing. You need to see it. And he was like, oh, that's funny. The creator of that show keeps trying to get the rights to The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. And she goes, you better give him those rights. He's the only one who should make this movie. So he decided to check out the show, and the rights expired with some of the studios that they were working with. And now I get to sit before you today with being able to have made this movie.
Perfect example of God's timing. That's very cool.
Absolutely.
Very cool. So how do you go from having your head in The Chosen to doing this? It's quite a reach.
Yes, but yes, that's true. And it's the only movie or project that my wife Amanda and I would allow me to do in between seasons of The Chosen, because obviously The Chosen is a full-time year-round job. But when this opportunity came up, we both agreed I had to take it. I actually don't think it's quite as much of a stretch as it may seem. Stylistically, for sure. It's a little bit more modern, obviously, because it's set, in today's time. It's got, the style of it, the tone of it is different from The Chosen, but the storyline and the approach to the greatest story ever told is actually similar. In The Chosen, we are taking the story of Jesus and we're showing it through a different lens without changing the intent or the meaning. And The Best Christmas Pageant Ever is very similar. Obviously, on the surface, it's about some unruly kids who take over a Christmas pageant. But it's because of their unique perspective, because of their outsider status, their poverty status. They're actually closer to the heart of God and closer to the heart of the Nativity story than we are in our modern day suburban life. And so I think that there really is a connection point there of, we're going to tell the story, we're going to present Jesus in an unapologetic way, but it's through a different lens than you're used to. And I think that's the connection point between this and The Chosen.
Now, when you're laying out something like this in your head and you're really going through the characters, I mean, you must have had a blast developing these characters in your head before they went anywhere else.
Absolutely. I mean, I've had almost 20 years to plan ahead for this. Now, of course, to be fair, Barbara Robinson, who's no longer with us, she's the author of the book. She created these main characters, and I'm just trying to do service to them. But to expand it into a feature film, yeah, you want to, just like I'm doing with the Bible, you want to utilize these main characters and know that you're doing things that aren't in the original source material, but you're still living out and exemplifying the character and intentions of the people that you're writing about. So, yeah, it was a blast because you've got 6 kids, the Herdmans. They're the quote unquote worst kids in the history of the world, according to everyone around them. And they are, they lie, they steal, they cheat, they bully. They also, though, of course, as we discover, have, they're missing one of their parents. Their mom is never around. They don't even know where she is half the time. So, you see very quickly that they're broken. So it was fun on one hand to create a lot of these fun, hilarious scenarios, the kinds of scenes that are in the book also that are great. But it really was also heartwarming and an opportunity to really, through the lens of a fun family Christmas comedy, tell the story of the gospel, really. And so I like to describe this movie in some ways as a Trojan horse. On the surface, it's a mainstream family comedy. It's going to be released in theaters all over the country from a big studio. But when you watch it, you're also going to see that not all that subtle, but still in a non-intrusive way, is the story of the gospel.
Well, the cool thing I recognize is that it is a comedy, and you say it'll hit a nerve with the mainstream. And I have to say the quality of the comedy and the delivery of it is much more of the quality that we have come to know with a lot of mainstream movies versus alleged comedy Christian movies. So I have to give you kudos on that. We've seen a lot of bad comedy expression with Christian content. You must have been aware of that going into this. What did you do to make it more "quote unquote" mainstream?
Yeah, it's funny, I think unfortunately some Christian films are comedic even if they don't intend to be. and I admit that, for the last 25 years of my time in the business, I've contributed my share of less than stellar content as well. But it's a good question. I honestly, a lot of it is honoring the book. The book is very, very funny. But to your point, they're actually, I think it's very difficult to come up with an example of a comedy that is faith-based, or at least comes from the perspective of a faith lens. There certainly hasn't been a successful one. I don't know. I can't even really think of one. So going into it, I don't really think about the past. I don't think about other projects. I just think about, how do I make the best movie possible? And in this case, I want to make something funny, but that has a very strong emotional and spiritual gut punch in the end. And I think the key is to just not think of it through that lens of, all right, I'm telling a quote unquote Christian story. The story is inherently that. The story is inherently about God and the story of the Nativity. And I'm just trying to do service to the book. I'm trying to do service to good comedy. I mean, I've always been a student of comedy. I've always been a bit of a stand-up comedy buff. I love great comedies of the past. And so I've seen a lot of great comedy movies, and sometimes it's just by osmosis. You just try to pick up on what's good timing. And another thing, I think the secret sauce in many ways, although it's not so secret, is the cast. Judy Greer plays the mom. Pete Holmes plays the dad. Those are two comedic geniuses. Pete Holmes is a very popular stand-up comic. Judy Greer has been doing great comedies and is one of the great comedic actresses of our time over the past 25 years. And so that's key. The kids were great. I mean, I think you saw that in the movie is when you see these performances, they're not trying too hard. They're just inherently funny. And so tone is really important, but that starts with the script, and it's ultimately realized with the cast.
You've had tremendous success with The Chosen, but of course, before that, we've heard the story about how you basically almost gave it up after a theatrical project didn't really work out the way you wanted it to. So I want to talk a little bit about second chances.
Yeah.
And about because there are a lot of folks listening to this right now who are praying for that second chance. Their plan A didn't work out for them, and now they're praying for that second chance. Tell me a little bit about that journey that you went through, and provide some encouragement for folks that are hanging on, praying for that second chance right now.
Yeah. Back in 2017, my feature film, The Resurrection of Gavin Stone, was released in theaters. And that was an example of a comedic film that just didn't resonate, or at least didn't do it well at the box office. The more accurate term for it would probably be bomb. It was a bomb at the time. And I was home alone with my wife, and we were crying and praying and confused, because when something fails, your first question is, what got me here? What did I miss? And many times you question whether or not God is in it, because we sometimes think, well, God's not the author of failure. So it's impossible for us to fail if God was what was in this or called us to it. The problem with that thinking is that we oftentimes have the wrong definition of failure. There are many, many quote unquote successful projects that were failures when it came to God's involvement, meaning, yeah, we had financial success, but God wasn't in it. And there's plenty of projects and people and initiatives and ministries that aren't quote unquote successful by the world's definition, that when you get to heaven, God will hug you and smile and say, thank you, well done, good and faithful servant. And I think the ultimate test of success or failure comes in Exodus 14, and that's the story of the parting of the Red Sea. And that is, God told the Israelites to camp out at the edge of the Red Sea. He didn't say, they escaped Egypt and now they're going to go away. And he didn't say, all right, now I want you to get to the edge of the Red Sea and you're going to go around it, or I'm going to make a pathway for you. He said, I want you to encamp there and wait. Now, why would he tell them to do that? Why would he put them in that position of essentially failure? Because when the Egyptians came, they had nowhere to go. They were trapped, and they were there because God told them to. And it's similar to the story of the feeding of the 5,000, which is the story I tell most often about my failure story, which is that realizing that God actually got the people that Jesus was speaking to hungry. Jesus was the one who was responsible for their hunger. He'd been talking for 3 days. He got them to the place of desperation, just like he got the Israelites to the place of desperation when they were at the edge of the Red Sea. So in Exodus 14, God makes it very clear, because he says it 4 times, I will get glory. So when he had Moses part the Red Sea, when he had the Egyptians demolished by the Red Sea crashing over the top of them, he kept saying, I will do this so that I will get glory. That is the definition of success or failure, is getting glory for God. And so when you are looking for that second chance, or when you are judging or measuring whether or not you have had success or failure, or you are waiting for the next step, stop for a second and go, what does the next step look like? What do I think success looks like? And if it's anything different from God getting glory, then you have the wrong definition and you have the wrong perspective. So that's the key for us. Is I happen to have the fortune and the privilege and it's the privilege of a lifetime to have had something like The Chosen, which came out of my failure. And The Chosen has been, quote unquote, successful by the world standards and by God's standards. But that's very, very rare. And I would argue that the first year after my failure was as successful as the time that I'm talking to you today, even though The Chosen hadn't happened yet, because I was giving God glory and I was finding strength in my weakness more than ever before in my entire life. And that's what success looks like.
So one of these days, are we going to see a prequel to The Chosen?
Well, stay tuned. There are, I think, the entire Old Testament is a prequel to The Chosen.
Exactly.
So there's plenty of stories to tell, and we'll let you know when we've got them.
So finally, to wrap this up, just tell me what you hope, other than for this thing to become a Christmas classic. What do you hope to accomplish with this film?
Yeah, and honestly, becoming a Christmas classic or not really isn't. And I know what you meant. I know we're being lighthearted here, but it's really not what I'm thinking about. I really do want God to get glory. And so what I'm hoping that people come away with when they watch this movie is that when Jesus came, when he was Emmanuel, God with us, which we talk about actually in the movie, when God became man and sacrificed everything for us, he came as a humble servant. He came as an outsider. His parents were outsiders. And I hope that because an outsider in poverty gave up everything to speak to us and to be with us, hopefully we're willing to do the same thing for those around us. And you'll see in this movie, there is a very strong message of what God's done for us, we should be doing for others.
So I'm going to be the first to tell you that I think that you have the first Christmas classic in years. How's that?
Wow, that's very kind. From your lips to God's ears and to the ears of the theater owners all over the country.
Well, thank you, my friend. Great catching up with you, and much success to you with this project.
Yeah, thank you, David.
Thanks again, Dallas. It's great catching up with you. It's always great having you. And of course, the movie comes out November the 8th. It's called The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. And do get your tickets in advance. This one's going to sell out. It's going to be a great family. Hopefully it'll be an annual favorite, but you want to see it when it first hits theaters on November the 8th. You can get your tickets right now at bestchristmaspageantever.movie. That's bestchristmaspageantever.movie. Ever.movie. So make sure you do that. This has been CIA Contagious Influencers of America from the producers of Keep the Faith. Do check out our websites at KeepTheFaith.com, where we've got all kinds of little Christmas gifts for you. And of course, our ContagiousInfluencers.com is where you can listen to all of these podcasts, okay? Until next time, go out there and live that life in living color, because it sure is a heck of a lot more interesting than living it in black and white. I'll see you next time.